Welcome to the Ministry of Sound, a perfect name for a venue for a Compass event, a congregation of purpose. I hope you've all brought your dancing shoes, and I'm sorry for the people who weren't let in because they were wearing trainers. Look, let's get this bit out of the way first. Today is obviously a Labour-facing event, but I know that a good lot of you aren't Labour. And as ever, Compass welcomes everybody who wants a good society, a world that is much more equal, sustainable, but only because it's much more democratic. In the furious fight against reform and Farage, in the complexity and chaos of economic, geopolitical and environmental crises, we're going to need all hands on deck. But look, Compass decided in 2011 to be more than just Labour. We decided that because, frankly, we had a lot more in common with Caroline Lucas than Peter Mandelson. We did it because we saw the fragmentation of our political system coming, and today we live in that multi-party reality. We were right to embrace this fragmentation and work our way through how we build alliances for change. But we did it because we needed to pull Labour into the 21st century, a world where the future will only be negotiated and not imposed. And working with others, like the Labour for a New Democracy, we've helped pull the majority of the Labour Party into the 21st century, not least through their conversion of the membership, the unions, and so many in the Parliamentary Labour Party to PR. Now I say, yeah, I think that was Laura Parker starting to clap there on the conversion of the quite rightly, and much of it's down to her and her team. I say those here today who are not in the Labour Party, give us the space to finish the job of converting the party to pluralism and PR. And I say to those people here today in the Labour Party, the party is no longer the sole progressive big tent, but it's the biggest tent in a growing progressive campsite. Nothing for the foreseeable future is going to change unless Labour changes its attitudes to PR and working with others. Even in a hung Parliament situation, if we're going to make a new politics work, then Labour's conversion to that new politics must be full-throated and not half-hearted. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So Labour must change. And instead of just pulling it, some of us are going to have to jump back in to push it. Not because we give up on our pluralism and working with Greens and Liberal Democrats and others, but because we know it's the only way to change our democratic system so that we can change our society. Now I've got that out of the way, let's get on with the business at hand. First of all, I want to thank you for being here. Your Saturdays are precious, but not as precious as your belief that we must build a better world and that we can only do that together. And now, if you just bear with me, there's a particular group I want to thank. If you're a member of Compass, would you just stand up quickly? You know who you are. If you're a member of Compass, stand up. And now it's you who made today possible. You give us the resources and support to invest in days like this, to campaign on water like we did with Clive Lewis, and produce reports like Thin Ice, which tell us how to transform our country and win elections. Now sit down if you want to stop Nigel Farage. So if you're not yet a member of Compass, come and join your new political home. Thank you to all the speakers and the Compass staff and the volunteers who've worked so hard to make today possible. And I don't want to single out any one person, but I will. This is the first major event that Luke Hurst has ever organised, and he's done a great job. It shows that when you, yes, well, give it up to Luke. It shows that when you value people and throw them in at the deep end, that with a bit of support, they can do incredible things. Luke's experience is an allegory for the kind of politics-based trust that we believe in. Now, I just need to make one thing clear here. Some of you might think that I just thanked Luke Akehurst for organising this event. Now, understandably, not all of you will know who Luke Akehurst is, as opposed to our Luke Hurst. Luke Akehurst is the chief political fixer for Labour First, the right-wing party within a party that now runs Labour in its rather dull sectarian interest. Luke Akehurst is from Oxford, but he parachuted himself from his perch on the NEC into the safe Labour seat of Durham. 10 months later in May, his Labour council lost 38 of their 42 seats to Reform, who now run the place. Durham first, then the country, hey Luke? Now that's Luke's experience, and it's an allegory for what happens when a tiny fraction rule the roost, when everything is about their control of the party and what's good and not what's good for the whole party, or more importantly, the country. I say it's time to put an end to the out-of-control factionalism within the Labour Party, and frankly, I should know. And gently and warmly, I say that to people on the left of the party too. Corbynism wasn't exactly an open and plural project. But now, I knew I'd get a little heckle for that. A little heckle's absolutely fine. I said warmly and gently. But now the old Labour right are taking factionalism to the most damaging extremes. You can't run a complex economy and society on the basis of one small rigid group, especially when that one small group seems to have no ideas about why they want to be in control in the first place. I've been around the country talking to constituency Labour parties, and people are hanging on by their fingertips, appalled at the decisions on the winter fuel allowance, benefit cuts, the language on immigration, and the silence and inaction on Gaza. And all the time, they feel voiceless and powerless because they are voiceless and powerless. And that's got to change, and it will. So let's get to the heart of the issue. Labour had an electoral plan. And yes, we welcome the good moves on GB Energy Law, on rail law, on employment law, on the reset on Europe. But these are isolated victories in a sea of confusion and contradiction. They had no plan to govern. We need more. We need much more. We need a story about the country and the lives and the government this government is trying to create. We need an economic reset that allows us to invest in people and places to provide dignity and hope. But you can't reset the economy until you reset our democracy. Democracy is not a nice to have. It's not some liberal political fantasy. It's essential if we're to have that much more equal and sustainable world. The British state is dominated by orthodoxy and sustained through centralism. Our political system is run in the interests of a corporate elite, the whims of a few rich party donors, a few media barons, and a few swing voters in a few swing seats. Until we crack all of that open, a decade of radical renewal is simply impossible. PR is right because it's democratic, but it's right because it gives us the chance to change the system so that only then can we begin to change our society. Under first past the post, Labour feels it can only be win by promising the already rich and the already powerful that nothing much will change. Labour built a cage from its victory and now inevitably sows the seeds of disillusionment. The leadership and some of their advisors know this and are already developing their strategy for the next election. It is to frame it as a straight choice between Prime Minister Starmer or Prime Minister Farage. Then, under first past the post, you squeeze people back into your camp. It's the politics of the least bad option. And I tell you, it's playing with absolute fire. It can backfire electorally in the short term. And in the long term, it won't deliver the change that people need. And so despair deepens until eventually they decide to roll the dice and vote for someone they feel who does offer real change. Because that's what the country is crying out for. In all of this, we are told that the mainstream left just aren't realistic enough. Let me tell you, as we face rampant poverty and inequality, as climate chaos ricochets around us and the threat of national populism becomes a governing reality, it's us in this room who are the realists when we demand a modest tax on those with wealth above 10 million so that the poorest don't have to suffer even more. It's us in this room who are the realists when we say the commitment to net zero must be honoured if we are to avoid the worst of climate chaos coming down the track. It's us who are the realists when we demand investment to retrofit every home and property that needs it. It's us who are the realists when we see power and resources devolve down to the lowest levels of our country to ensure that councils across the country can build the homes and the public transport infrastructure our communities need. It is us who are the realists when we know reform cannot be beaten by pandering to them, only by taking them on ideologically. I say we are the mainstream realists, and we are telling Nigel Farage, you are not having our country. You are not going to have our country. It's too good for you. Now, in all of this, there's been a lot of talk of blue Labour. Look, we don't think everything should be modernised all the time, that globalisation should just be allowed to rip, to destroy communities and lives. We believe in a thing called class, and we believe in places called home. But I tell you, we will only unite this country and change it for good when we combine progressivism with communitarianism and not see them as binary opposites. We all want to conserve some things in our lives and change others. I tell you what, I'm not feeling blue. I'm feeling really hopeful that we can build a huge class alliance for change. Our compass went beyond Labour, and it's a lesson to us. Look what happens when we take our eye off the ball. Back in the day, we supported the last Labour government. When it did good things, we pushed them to do better things and stopped them doing stupid things. Those days are back. But it's not just influence we need, but the best people making the right decisions. People like Lou and Miata, who we'll be hearing from today. And we need ideas. Coming out of today, we'll soak up all the contributions and questions and produce a report on how we get a decade of radical renewal. And this month, Compass is really proud to have saved and relaunched Renewal, the quarterly journal of social democracy, as a vital space for strategy and ideas. Look, I know, I'm getting there. Look, I know things can get bleak, but hope is everywhere. It's in those surveyation polls on Labour lists that show that Ed Miliband is far and away Labour's favourite cabinet member, because he's a centre-left realist, serious about tackling climate change. Hope is in the same polls that show that Andy Burnham is by far and away the most popular person to be the next leader of the Labour Party. And you'll get him later on today. But more importantly, probably, there's hope out there in civil society and progressive organisations who know they can't win on their policy agenda without changing our economic and democratic systems. It's called systems consciousness, and it's rising everywhere. And there is hope in the country. There is a progressive majority in our land. In 11 out of the last 12 general elections, progressive voters outnumbered the right. In 11. Thatcherism would never have happened if our electoral system didn't divide us and let them rule. Of course, that majority needs to be politically constructed, but it can be and it will be. And when we combine state power with social power, we become unstoppable. If they don't listen to the realists, Labour could squander all of this hope and hand the keys to Farage and reform. We're not going to let it happen. Labour is lost, but help is at hand. We know what it needs. It needs a compass. Thank you for being here, for being realists, for being so political and being what our country needs. Thank you for being here.